let's talk about the class of 2024. Clemson already has 5 players committed. They've got Christian Betancourt, a tight end. They've got a defensive lineman. They have 2 safeties and a kicker. You don't have to spend too much time on it because it's so early, but just some initial thoughts on the 2024 class.
Yeah. I really haven't. So I obviously I'm big into recruiting. Since 2019, I have recorded the top 10 players at every position through 2023. And then I do like a 5-star list. So obviously I watched like all the players. That said, I have not really started digging into 2024 yet that aggressively. I basically just turned the corner on 2023, but I do have, a little bit of insight, of course, on the class because it is an important one. Um, obviously we missed on Walker White on Friday, which stinks. I've liked him as a prospect, maybe more than Chris Vizina. Reminded me a lot of Max Dugan, so I guess it's fitting that Garrett Riley was recruiting him. It was a surprise, I think, to the public, but I actually have a buddy at Auburn right now who tipped me off the day before, so I wasn't really surprised. They won over Mom with some little details. He's a good prospect, but I think that our quarterback for the class can still be very high level. It's a very deep class for quarterbacks. Merklinger is a name that immediately comes to mind. I think he's very highly rated on 3. So that would be potential for a splash quarterback. Commitment. I don't really know much about him as a prospect. I've heard that there are some competing opinions, and I would guess that might be why Clemson hasn't made a move yet. But they're very familiar with Merklinger already, so that would be a courtship. I could expect would go pretty quickly if Clemson did decide him as their main quarterback target. As for other positions, I think I'm going to harp on wide receiver. It's so important this class. It really is. And skill players, we have offered some big fish already. Mike Matthews, Ryan Wingo, Jonathan Paylor are some names to pay attention to. And I think you need to land at least one of those guys in this class. Braylon Staley is a guy they're after. He's in state. I know Georgia just offered him as well. He's going to probably slow things down until the end of spring. And I think they're also after Alex Taylor, who probably wants in the class right now, but I think speed is a concern for the staff. Just off if I had to guess. But, obviously solid tight end committed already. Offensive line class that's, an offensive line board that's still materializing. I think the defensive line class will be very strong again, pound for pound. It might not be as many players because of how many we signed last year, but some big names that we're still in for, and some solid talent. I will say one observation I've been making about our recruiting classes lately is it seems the defensive line we're recruiting for are more, their body types are fit more for a schematic 3-4. And I think that's an interesting shift that we've seen from Wes Goodwin, or at least since he became the defensive coordinator. But 3 recruits, I would say, crown jewel potential, and then I'll wrap up there. Mike
Well,
Matthews.
let me jump in before you go there. I think one thing Clemson fans should be very pleased with is the 2 fairly new coaches, and Nick Eason and Wes Goodwin, seem like they've been great recruiting. Does that seem fair, high level
Yeah,
takeaway?
yeah. Nick Eason especially has just been an absolute monster on the trail. Wes Goodwin has been surprising. It's a funny story, actually. I don't know if you remember when we were recruiting Tony Rojas. I think he ended up committing to Penn State. He was a guy I really liked, but on junior day, we were only going to take 2 linebackers, and they communicated to Jamal Anderson, D. Creighton, and Tony Rojas. They said, okay, the first 2 players to commit out of you 3, you get to, like, those are the 2 spots that we're taking. And apparently D. Creighton committed about 30 seconds before Tony Rojas. So that was the difference. That was the difference in why he's not
Wow.
in the class.
Wow. And one other thing I wanted to ask you about. So you seem to either say or at least kind of imply that wide receiver is kind of the spot that maybe is the most important they really need to hit on. I was kind of thinking it might be running back, as they haven't landed at least a highly touted blue chip in a little while. Would you disagree with that? Would you still say it's wide receiver or about the same? Just your thoughts on that.
I think you need to land a blue chip running back this class. Absolutely. Absolutely, because you're more than likely going to lose one of Shipley or Maffa after the season. I think you probably keep one. Unless the season goes really well, and then we might be having a different conversation. But I think you need to land a blue chip guy to at least potentially be your running back 2 next year. And I think they're looking at a guy from North Cobb. He's got a David Eziomume, I think is how you say his last name. But my buddy is actually his running back coach, so I might have to
Really?
get I might
Yeah,
have to get
North
some
Cobb's
info.
right over by me. Yes, you'll have to get the scoop. All right, I'll let you wrap up with what you were going to say. A couple gems you're really hoping for, and we'll call it a show.
Yeah, I would say there are three guys that Clemson really wants to land this year, and unfortunately, they're all from Georgia. um, so that comes with very obvious, hurdles that you're going to have to get over. Mike Matthews, KJ Bolden, and Sammy Brown. Mike Matthews and KJ Bolden are both athletes that could both play on either side of the ball. I think Matthews is probably more likely to be a wide receiver at this point. Um, Somebody who Clemson and they were very high on each other early on. I think they still are, but someone that's going to need to have at least another visit, before he gets into the nitty gritty of his recruitment to really solidify Clemson's standing as a contender. But I absolutely think that's a recruitment that Clemson can go the distance with. I would say, I mean, the top 5 or 6 of these 3 players are basically all the same schools: Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Ohio State, and Georgia. I think I said Georgia twice, but that's the competition that you're dealing with on these guys. Yeah, KJ Bolden's probably going to be a safety. I think I'm hoping his recruitment doesn't play out the same way that it did as Caleb Downs, who was the #1 safety of the last class. Somebody who had early interest in Clemson, but eventually NIL and fit just weren't there at the end. I'm hoping that we made a move on KJ Bolden, but I'm still gathering some information to see just how in it we are there. But another one that you want to get back on campus in the spring to really see how far that relationship can progress. But the #1 recruit I want this class is Sammy Brown. That's my guy, my Peter Woods this cycle. He can play immediately, and obviously we need linebackers after this season. So um, he reminds me a lot of Trent Simpson, phenomenal athlete. He might even be a better athlete than Trent Simpson, which is a pretty remarkable
Wow.
thing to say.
Yeah.
But that's Clemson versus Georgia right there, toe to toe. So we're gonna have to have another upset to win. I think Clemson has done a good job showing him what differentiates them from Georgia, and now at this point, it's about really hammering home that that's the reason why you want to come to this school. And I guess I'll leave with that.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you for joining us again. This is Tommy Kulkis from Shakin the Southland. We appreciate your time. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Ryan.